Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is Israel's battle against Hamas. What else could I be thinking about? What else could you be thinking about? Israel's battle against Hamas, codenamed Operation Swords of Iron, will inevitably turn out to be a long and drawn-out battle. This is not the Six-Day War of 1967. We live in a society where we want instant results, instant gratification, where we have a switch on everything. It switches on, switches off, immediately at our disposal. Quick fixes and quick solutions. And while it is natural to hope for wars to end quickly, with minimal damage and loss to life and property, reality and history prove otherwise. Gaza and Hamas and the war with Israel are not ripe for a quick fix. This war will require time, discipline, and tremendous patience. For the past 18 years, over and over again, since 2005, when the Jewish state, when Israel completely withdrew from Gaza, Israel has attempted to militarily set Hamas back. Israel's stated goal was to destroy Hamas's infrastructure and their armaments. Despite their goals, Hamas was successful, and they were able to rearm their military and refortify their tunnels. Time and time again, Hamas would shoot rockets into Israel, and Israel would bomb Gaza from the air. Israel would send in strike forces and special ops for very specific targets and operations. But that was not a ground war. That was not a ground offensive at all. That was then. This is now. Bombing from the air and sending in special ops teams meant that human cost to Israel was minimalized. Israel struck Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad from the air from a safe distance. The strategy was only minimally successful. Hamas was only temporarily hindered. With the help of their friends in the Muslim and Arab world, Hamas quickly rearmed and reestablished themselves. The tunnels Israel thought they had destroyed were reopened, and new tunnels were constructed. Then came the morning of October 7th, Saturday morning, the Jewish festival of Simchat Torah. This time was different. This was a massacre by Hamas. In previous missile attacks and incursions, a handful of Israelis were killed and injured. Israel mourned the losses and moved on. But the brutal murder of nearly 1,500 Israelis and the wounding of over 4,000, at least 200 hostages taken, and those still missing and unaccounted for, that changed the rules of the game. The carnage is overwhelming. Israel was established on the principle of self-defense. The Jewish state would defend itself from those who wish to destroy it. Hamas wants to destroy Israel. It is their charter. It is their only solution now for Israel is to root out Hamas. As the old saying goes, that is easier said than done, though. Rooting out Hamas is not just a matter of destroying buildings and tunnels. Rooting out Hamas means finding all those terrorists who participated and perpetrated the horror and this horrific massacre, all those who were involved in its planning, and all those who were involved in doing it, and all those who supported the mission. Over 1,500 Hamas terrorists have to date been killed or captured by the IDF since October 7th also. Terrorists perpetrating their dastardly deeds and then hiding in various communities, in hiding places. Hamas terrorists who were stopped before they were able to proceed to other towns and villages and continue their murderous rampage against Jews. Those not killed or not caught were terrorists who ran back to Gaza, into Gaza with their hostages, making a complicated situation even more complicated is the knowledge that a large group of Gazans not trained by Hamas, crossed into Israel through the breached fences, and once inside they looted, and then they too gathered innocent Israelis and took them into Gaza as their hostages. The slogan, the total defeat of Hamas, is not specific enough. The slogan, wipe Hamas off the face of the earth, is not a cliche. It's too cliche. Israel requires not slogans, but practical operational steps to achieve their goal and to allow Israelis to one day close their eyes at night and sleep absent the nightmares. The operational details are numerous. The operation will take at least a year. Historically, this operation in Gaza is akin to the denazification of Germany after World War II. It took years, and it took a Marshall Plan. It required the re-education of Germany. In the Germany that emerged afterwards was one of the most productive countries and one of the most powerful economies in the world. But it took a plan. A similar plan was necessary in Japan. After the United States invaded Iraq in 2003, one of the biggest mistakes they made was that they did not have a clear understanding of the success and failure of the operation, and the US had no plan for the day after. As a result, Iraq fell into disarray. The United States pulled out, and a huge vacuum was left. Yes, Saddam Hussein and his sons were defeated. All the players in that infamous or that famous card deck were, to use the euphemism, dispatched or captured. But what happens next is essential. Israel's war to destroy Hamas means going into Gaza for an extended period of time. That means plenty of destruction. Again, think World War II Germany, think Japan, think Dresden, where probably 25,000 Germans were killed. It also means that Israel has an obligation for the next stages. The rebuilding of Gaza, or at least organizing the process together with others, other like-minded states. It means creating a coalition of nations that reject terror. Israel will not shun their obligation. It is not, even in the aftermath of all that was done to the Jewish state, to the Israeli people, to the Israeli spirit. It is not the Israeli way. Israel has global conscience, and even with regard to their enemies. And even their enemies, do not. Coming up next, points of view. First up is a column from the Wall Street Journal. The column was published on October 16th, 2023, and it was written by Ruth Weiss. It's entitled "Anti-Zionism is a More Malevolent Form of Anti-Semitism." Subtitled, "It not only butchers Jews, but consigns Palestinian civilians to the role of cannon fodder." This is how Weiss begins. Anti-Semitism has scored its flashiest victory since 1945. While many commentators have called the attack by Palestinian terrorists the Jewish 9/11 or Pearl Harbor, Israelis recognize a more disturbing precedent, the Holocaust. Comparison of the Palestinian slaughter of Israelis in 2023 with the annihilation of European Jewry in the 1930s and 40s doesn't hinge on the comparable helplessness of Jewish victims. Those gunned down and tortured by Hamas terrorists were equally innocent. Yet the next day's mobilization of 150% of Israel's Defense Force reservists confirms the difference. Zionism won for the Jews the ability to inhabit and defend their homeland. There is little doubt that this time Israel will prevail. As Weiss continues, she explains that Hamas actually recruits by using the murder of Jews as a hook to attract followers, she writes. The equation of the Hamas attacks to the Nazi murders lies rather in once normal societies that turned monstrous while trying to annihilate the Jews. Anti-Semitism transformed Germans, among the most cultured people, into Nazis. Anti-Zionism has twisted Arabs and Muslims into something that in a way is even worse. Hamas advertises its butchery as a recruiting tool for followers, including in America. Weiss's next point is extremely profound, and she posits that the real goal for Hamas is the destruction of Gaza, to blame the Jews for killing Palestinians in Gaza, in her words. This is how anti-Zionism has grown to exceed anti-Semitism in malevolence. To blame Israel for occupying Arab land, it was necessary to keep the Palestinian population permanently displaced. That is why the Arab League never accepted the partition of Palestine, and why the Palestinians have never built their state in the West Bank and Gaza. Anti-Zionism demands the continuing sacrifice of the Palestinians. The destruction of Gaza is the real object of the Hamas attack on Israel. Butchering Jews to prove Arab bravery was the minor goal, but the main goal was to ensure that Jews are blamed for killing Palestinians. In her conclusion, Weiss asks us to figure out how this pathological behavior emerged. She writes, Obvious questions reveal the corruptors of Arab societies. When Israel withdrew from Gaza in 2005, why didn't the Palestinians create an infrastructure for an independent state? Did Western funding for permanent refugees create terrorists in waiting? How could so many Palestinians, once among the most advanced Arabs in the Middle East, have turned into the purveyors of what President Biden correctly called sheer evil? A second line of inquiry must open here. How did this depraved ideology penetrate America's universities, its elites, and even the US Congress to a degree that the German Bund in the 1930s never found possible? How did the idea of eliminating Israel galvanize the intersectional coalition of our disaffected minorities? Middle Eastern studies and political scientists should have been investigating how this pathological behavior developed, and they must do so now. Late-stage anti-Zionism has reached a point of universal destruction. There is no time to lose. Please, do yourselves a favor. Whenever you see the name Ruth Weiss attached to a thought piece like this one, pay close attention. She's always worth paying attention to. Next up is an editorial from the Wall Street Journal, and it was published on October 16th also. It's entitled, Palestinian Lives Matter, Except to Hamas. Subtitled, Responsibility for Civilian Casualties in Gaza Lies with the Jihadists. The editors of the Wall Street Journal offer a biting critique of Hamas. This is how they begin. As Israel prepares for its likely ground invasion to pursue Hamas in Gaza, the world is warning about civilian casualties. The moral point to keep in mind as the fighting gets intense is that the responsibility for those casualties will lie with Hamas. Israel has an obligation to do what it can to protect civilians, and it is doing so. It has warned Gazans to move to the south of the territory as it prepares its campaign. It's using precision-guided bombs when it can target Hamas combatants rather than civilians. No one has bigger strategic stake in reducing civilian Palestinian casualties than Israel, given the propaganda fodder they provide its enemies. The editorial continues by correctly assigning blame to Hamas and not to Israel. The piece continues, blaming Israel for these civilian casualties amounts to denying the Jewish state its right to self-defense. It means that Hamas can launch attacks on Israel with the goal of slaughtering women and children, but Israel can't attack Hamas in Gaza because civilians might be unintentional casualties. It means Hamas would retain a terrorist sanctuary from which it can attack Israel whenever it has the means and opportunity. The editors correctly point out the worldwide double standard, and they continue, no other country on earth would agree to the terms of defensive engagement that much of the world wants to impose on Israel. If Mexico launched an assault on El Paso from Ciudad Juarez, the U.S. would send in the military and find the killers and destroy their sanctuaries. The Wall Street Journal concludes writing that this time is different, that Israel needs to destroy Hamas. This is how they say it. Israel has shown forbearance against Gaza in the past, targeting Hamas fighters and infrastructure. But Hamas was left in power in Gaza to rearm and plot its murderous assault on innocents this month. Israel now has its goal is to destroy Hamas, and doing so will save as many Palestinian lives in the future as it will Israelis. Coming up, commentary through cartoons where pictures tell the story. I want to show you 3 cartoons and memes today. Then I want to show you a flag of Israel, and finally a video of a Holocaust survivor who asks Israeli soldiers to do her a favor. So first up is a cartoon of Zelensky of Ukraine and Netanyahu of Israel. They're comparing gifts received from the United States. Zelensky has a backpack overstuffed with cash from the US. The US flag is on the backpack. He asks Bibi, what did you get? And Bibi is reading a card sent him by far-left Democrats. A Hamas rocket is sticking out of his pack, and Bibi says, a sympathy card, supposedly. The card reads, don't fight back. Wow, that's powerful. Next up is a checklist of Hamas money distribution. Water, electricity, medical equipment, schools. No to all of them. They're marked with a big red X. Terrorism, however, is marked with a big green check mark. Very sad, but oh, so true. This meme is a side-by-side comparison of downtown London. We see an empty city square after Hamas massacres of Jews. After Israel responds, the square is filled with thousands of protesting people. Oh, so true there too. Very sad. This picture is of the Israeli flag, but is much more than a simple flag. The Israeli flag is actually composed of the faces of all the people we can or so far identify who were murdered by Hamas on October 7th. We can't possibly show you all the photos. Let this be a small tribute to the overwhelming many. Every victim has a face, a name, a family, a story. They will forever be part of the heart and soul of the flag of Israel, of the people of Israel. This Holocaust survivor's name is Nomi, but she's also lovingly known as Bubby Nomi, or simply Bubby. This Bubby, this grandmother, wants everyone, especially Israeli soldiers, to say the words Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. It's the Hebrew prayer recited before eating bread or sitting down to a meal. Bubby Nomi uses a word play. In Hebrew, lechem means bread, and in Hebrew also, lechima means battle. Remember, as she speaks. But it's important to Bubby, and I'll let her tell you why.
Soldiers, my dear soldiers, let me tell you about the secret weapon. I'm 94 years old, a Holocaust survivor. My name is Naomi Waldman. I was a little girl in the Shoah. The Germans started to bomb Belgium, and we were told to hide in the basement of a church with hundreds of other people. Everybody was praying, saying Tehillim by heart, but I didn't know anything by heart. All I could remember to say was the bracha on bread. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. I said it over and over again, hamotzi lechem min haaretz, and my whole family was saved. I never thought I would see another Shoah. But there is a major difference between then and now. Then we didn't have an army with such a wonderful commanders and fantastic soldiers. So here is your secret weapon. When you feel danger, say that bracha, Hamotzi. And may Hashem take the lechem, lechima, out of our land. I love you all. God keep you and safe and return to your loving family. Please take a video of yourself and with other soldiers saying the bracha Hamotzi and send it to my number. I love you and we will win. I love you.
In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh and Iranian Foreign Minister Hussein Amir Abdul Hania, put their heads together and discussed a means of stopping what they term Israel's brutal crimes in the besieged Gaza enclave. In Hebrew, we can just call that chutzpah. In an interview with Britain's Sky News, Israeli President Isaac Herzog revealed that USB flash drives found on the bodies of Hamas terrorist leaders killed in Israeli territory contained instructions for producing chemical weapons and their development against civilian populations. Herzog pointed out that the document originated from a 2003 Al-Qaeda manual indicating the connections between Al-Qaeda and Hamas's intention to use chemical weapons for mass destructions against Jews. In other words, gassing the Jews. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant reiterated his commitment to the eradication of Hamas. During a situation assessment with the Air Force's High Command, Gallant said, "It may take a month or 2 or even 3, but in the end there will be no Hamas. Before the enemy encounters our armor and our infantry forces, they meet the Air Force's bombs." According to the White House, U.S. President Joe Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu agreed on the continued flow of humanitarian assistance into the Gaza Strip amid Israel's war against the terrorist faction that rules Gaza, which is Hamas. According to a readout of the conversation between the two leaders that was released by the White House, the president welcomed the first 2 convoys of humanitarian assistance since Hamas's October 7th terrorist attack, which crossed the border into Gaza and is being distributed to the Palestinians in need. The leaders affirmed that there will now be continued flow of this critical assistance into Gaza. I have to point out that the first shipment of humanitarian aid into Gaza was delivered with Israel's approval despite the opposition from the families of Israelis who were listed as missing or held hostage in Gaza. Moving up to the north, the northern border between Israel and Lebanon and Israel and Syria, the IDF reported that it struck 2 terrorist cells in Lebanon near the Har Dov and Metula areas. Based on intelligence, the terrorist cells near Metula were believed to be preparing a launch and launching anti-tank missiles into Israeli territory. While the cell in Har Dov aimed to shoot rockets, both cells were eliminated before they could carry out any attacks against Israel. The IDF said that it was striking dozens of Hamas terror targets in the Gaza Strip also at the very same time. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. You are about to hear a song sung by Israeli children, recorded in an Israeli sound studio. It is a very powerful performance. The song is probably familiar to many of you. It is the song "Stand By Me," originally performed and written by Ben E. King in 1961 in collaboration with Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller. In 1986, the song "Stand By Me" was both the title and the song of a hit movie directed by Rob Reiner, based on a short story or a novella by Stephen King entitled "The Body." As powerful as it was then, it is even more powerful today. Much more powerful today. Listen.
We, the children in Israel, are going through very sad, scary, and difficult times. We wanted to ask you for only one thing. Stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me.
When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand that crumble to the sea. Stand by.
No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long
as you stand
by me. So all I ask is stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. All I ask is stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand. Stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me.
Oh, stand. Stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me. Oh, stand. Stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me.
Stand by me. Stand by me.
Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.